When it comes to Israel's current war against Hamas, there is a clear gap between the sides on a moral level. One side, Hamas and its allies, seeks to murder civilians. That's why they slaughtered 1,400 innocent Jews in Israel and have planted their military sites directly in civilian areas while attempting to stop their own civilians from escaping those areas. Hamas openly acknowledges, they say, that they use civilians as human shields. The other side, Israel, seeks to save civilians. That's precisely why Hamas locates its military assets in civilian neighborhoods. If Israel were truly a human rights monster that didn't care about civilians, Hamas would have no incentive to shield its weapons with innocent Gazans. On the one side, Hamas has a health ministry that routinely lies. In 2014, for example, Hamas's Interior Ministry website issued instructions to online activists, including the following statements. These are direct quotes. Quote, anyone killed or martyred is to be called a civilian from Gaza or Palestine before we talk about his status in jihad or his military rank. Don't forget to always add innocent civilian or innocent citizen in your description of those killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza. They also say, quote, avoid publishing pictures of rockets fired into Israel from Gaza city centers. This would provide a pretext for attacking residential areas in the Gaza Strip, unquote. Because Hamas runs a tyrannical terror state, media members are routinely told what to report, which is why that same year, in 2014, the Washington Post admitted that when it comes to body counts, the Hamas health minister was, quote, the only game in town. They threatened reporters. That same minister acknowledged that he maximized the count of civilian casualties. The New York Times in 2014 recognized that Hamas inflates such statistics as well. The other side, Israel, is a democracy with high levels of transparency, a free press, a robust democracy with highly aggressive opposition parties. The current prime minister of Israel has been dragged by that media and opposition through scandal after scandal. That doesn't mean that Israel doesn't get things wrong. It does mean that Israel does not make lying its central principle in military matters. One side, Hamas and its esteemed colleagues in Palestinian Islamic Jihad, has a very long history of firing rockets that end up hitting their own people. In 2022, for example, Israel estimated that some 1/5 of all 1,000 Palestinian Islamic Jihad rockets fell within Gaza. During the current war, over 7,000 rockets have been fired at Israel. At least 400 of them fell short and hit Gaza. Here are just some video examples from the recent past.
On October 17th, Islamic Jihad destroyed a hospital in Gaza when a rocket aimed toward Israel misfired and landed in Gaza. This isn't the first time. While thousands of rockets are fired toward Israel, rockets fail. These failed rocket launches cause mass destruction and the death of countless innocent individuals inside Gaza.
Now, here's a map of all the failed launches during this war alone. You can see this map blankets the entire Gaza Strip from south to north. One side, Israel, has a precision military that seeks to hit as many military targets in as efficient a way as possible. That military routinely passes up shots on military targets if too many civilians will be harmed. So, with all of this said, naturally, when a hospital allegedly blew up in the Gaza Strip yesterday afternoon, and Hamas immediately claimed that the explosion was an Israeli airstrike and that 500 people had been killed, the media used their heads. They decided to wait for all the information to emerge because, Hamas are liars. Nah, just kidding. They went with Hamas's report because this is what they do. As it turned out, Hamas was, as usual, lying. Lying from beginning to end. A failed Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket hit the hospital. Actually, to be more accurate, it hit the parking lot next to the hospital, doing no apparent structural damage to the building. We still don't know how many people actually died. We don't know the real number of casualties. It took Israel weeks to determine how many people had died in the assault on its southern border. Hamas threw out the number 500 within 15 minutes of the rocket falling. There's only one reason the media jumped to listen to Hamas. The media have an insanely strong stake in creating moral equivalence between Israel and its terrorist opponents. They operate under a soft-headed mindset that seeks moral parity between parties to a conflict. But as it turns out, they only seek that moral parity when one of the parties is Jews. If we're talking about, say, Russia-Ukraine, the American media treat every Russian claim with a grain of salt and believe pretty much everything put out by the Ukrainian government. If we're talking about a full-on terrorist group that just slaughtered babies, however, our media are suddenly shockingly credulous. They suddenly believe what the terrorists have to say. How interesting. How revealing. What we're actually watching in real time as a genocidal Jew-hating terror group laundered a lie about a Jewish massacre of innocents at a Baptist hospital is what we call a blood libel. That term dates back to the year 1144 when Jew-haters charged the Jews of Norwich, England with ritually murdering a young boy named William for religious purposes. Frequently, such blood libels claim that Jews used Christian blood to bake Passover matzah. Similar blood libels were used for centuries